for human rights. And we are joined today by a range of speakers who will be talking to us about the need to stop the attacks on the International Criminal Court. After the ICC prosecutor Karim Khan filed applications for warrants of arrest for Israeli and Hamas leaders for war crimes in Gaza, there has been backlash against the decision at some of the highest levels of numerous governments, including Western governments. This does pose a threat to sort of the legitimacy and independence of the International Criminal Court, as there have been calls, as well as threats against the former ICC prosecutor. So I think today we can start with Mr. Haroon Raza, who is a Dutch lawyer and a member of the 30th March movement, who can speak to us about this.
Well, in general, I think we've all known that Israel in general has always had this type of strategy. So the strategy of intimidation, can you hear me? Great. Of subversion and of blackmail, etc. We've already experienced that in this country for a long time. In fact, any so-called anti-Israeli movement or court case or complaint or whatever has always been met with a string of, let's call it counterattacks. Legal counterattacks. We've had them in the press, especially in, for example, the main newspaper, the Telegraaf, which is a national newspaper and extremely Zionist, and on other levels as well. So on the one hand, it really isn't that surprising, but on the other hand, if we look at the extent to which these attacks, this intimidation, because that's what it amounts to, has been going on, it is quite extreme. The more important issue is why the Dutch authorities, for example, didn't do much about it. Because what I've read in the newspapers regarding the intimidation of the office of the prosecutor, for example, is that the Dutch police didn't really take it seriously. At least that's what it looks like at face value. I think it's extremely important to push this point forward that in Western democracies and in any state which has a rule of law, it's of the utmost importance that prosecutors and also lawyers can do their job without any fear of intimidation or fear of safety. And I think it's up to us to make sure that this is properly spoken about, and that it isn't brushed underneath the rug, as it seems it has been in the Netherlands, because it wasn't really national news. It was international news, but Dutch newspapers really didn't give it, I think, nearly no airtime whatsoever. At least airtime, no print room in the newspapers, and no airtime on TV. So that's one of the more astounding things. On the other hand, the Netherlands is an extremely Zionist country, in my opinion. I've been working on this issue since 2008 at the national court level, and including complaints at the ICC level. And what we see even at the national court level, so the National Prosecution Service is an extremely, not an intimidating sphere, but more, how shall I say, more level of you not being taken seriously. Whilst there are visible, clear war crimes and crimes against humanity, which have been taking place since 7th of October, but even before that. So that's what I could add to the debate regarding this.
Yeah, thank you so much. I guess we'd also be quite curious to hear from you if your movement has been impacted at all since the requests for the warrants were made. And if you'd like to address that now or later, either would be fine.
Certainly. Well, generally, we've lodged, I think I've lost count, but I think we are on 27 complaints, something like that, regarding IDF soldiers with dual nationality. Also IDF soldiers who were in the country by chance, which gives Holland jurisdiction. Various ministers, including the Prime Minister, which cases has now been referred to the prosecutor at the Supreme Court because of Dutch law. And I've also filed a complaint against a settler regarding not even settler violence, but just the fact that there is a settlement. This gentleman is living on occupied territory, and the fact that that could be, according to the Rome Statute, a form of aiding and abetting a war crime or crime against humanity, looking at the way in which you approach this issue. What has happened is that the Dutch prosecutor's office has dismissed a number of the complaints, but not all of them. So they've dismissed the general complaints against Dutch and Israeli dual nationals who are actively serving in the IDF. But within the dismissal, what they've actually said is, look, we're not even going to look into this. So they have not conducted any investigation. Because of that, we have now lodged an Article 12 procedure at the High Court level in the Netherlands, in which we can complain about the fact that the prosecutor's office rejected our complaints, but more importantly, didn't even instigate any investigations themselves. So that's where we are right now. Regarding the settler, the single settler who we lodged a complaint against, this guy has, just for your information, has lodged a complaint with the Bar Ethics Committee against me, which is going to be heard. Yeah, exactly. Which is going to be heard on the 24th of June. So I've already got a lawyer now. I retained counsel regarding that. And he's been helped by organizations like the CIDI, which is the preeminent Zionist organization in this country, and a very prominent Zionist lawyer. But anyway, that's general, just giving you guys a general heads up about what's happening here. What else? We are preparing quite a serious complaint against Ecuadorian nationals who are fighting with the IDF, because a lot of IDF soldiers are in fact from South America at the ICC. So that's something we're working on right now in my office. And what else have we got in store for Israel? Let me think, because we were doing a lot of things at the same time. Yeah, we also lodged together with another group of lawyers, of colleagues of mine, a 164-page complaint with the ICC, which can also be co-signed online, which has already been submitted. And we've opened the possibility for anybody who agrees with that and would like to have the name added to the complaint to sign it online. And we have about, I think, 4,000 to 5,000 people who have signed up. So that's generally where we are right now.
Is this just last follow-up? Would this complaint has this been made public? Because I think we'd be quite curious.
It's online. You can
Okay,
find
great. So it would be great if you could share a link. I think
I'll do that after we finish. It's on the March 30th site, so you can just click and you guys can see it there. And it's quite comprehensive, because it's the first time I've seen a complaint in which we've made subdivisions. So, for example, hospitals, schools, mosques and churches, etc. And what we've also done is, with a team, it wasn't only me. We've been working on it for 3 months now with 7 attorneys at law. What we've done is we've compiled a collection of all the video evidence and audio evidence on a USB, but also online. And we've added that to the complaint. So it's quite comprehensive.
Thank you so much. Really looking forward to reading that. I would like to invite next Dr. Noah Scheinlinger, who is an assistant professor of Middle East history at the Department of History and Poli-Sci at Worcester State University. Please, Doctor.
Hi. So I'm very glad to be part of this webinar. So I would like to briefly say a few things about the Palestinian prisoners, captives, right, in the hands of the Israelis. So I think many of us in the last couple of weeks have been reading about the Sde Timan camp, where a lot of Palestinians who were captured in Gaza are held. There have been at least 36 deaths of Palestinians there that we know of, plus several more in other locations, all in under the either under interrogation or during transfer, or in other in other camps. So we have about 48 cases. We already read about some of the conditions, the appalling conditions in which Palestinian prisoners are being held, the kind of torture, which is physical torture, psychological torture, and sexual abuse that Palestinian prisoners are going through. But what I want to add is that I have a few friends who are human rights and civil rights lawyers in Israel, right? Israeli lawyers whose clients are Palestinian political prisoners. And those clients are Palestinians who have been languishing in Israeli jails for many years, some for 20 years. Some of them, I mean, all of them have nothing to do with Hamas and nothing to do with October 7th. And what I was specifically kind of asked to talk about is that the kind of conditions that are imposed on the post-October 7th prisoners, right, under the, excuse that these are Hamas fighters, actually are also imposed on all Palestinian political prisoners. So my friend, the lawyer, specifically interviewed some of his clients. Again, those are people who have been in the Israeli detention centers for many years, and he counted the number of calories that they're allowed to eat in a day. They subsist in April, when he asked them, on 830 calories. So grown men subsist on 830 calories a day. So for instance, a couple of cucumbers that are cut and then divided between 11 people 3 times a day. 1 egg, 4 potatoes for 11 people. Now, he also wanted to shed some light on the conditions of this detention. Again, these are people who have been in Israeli prisons for many years. All of their personal belongings were taken away from them and tossed, including, family photos and all of that. They are crammed, at least 11 in a small cell. Some of them have beds, some of them don't. They're allowed 2 pairs of pants a day, but no laundry. Some of them are allowed to have underwear, some of them don't. It's extremely hot. There is no any kind of fan or anything like that. There is no cold water, only warm tap water. And there is light, electricity in the room only twice a day. And of course, there are no family visits for the past 8 months. And so the kind of conditions and torture, physical and psychological, is something that is shared, right? By virtually all Palestinians in Israeli prisons, regardless of where they were captured, the circumstances of their capture, the kind of accusations that Israel has against them. And only yesterday, we saw pictures of the wonderful popular leader, Bassem Tamimi from Nabi Saleh, who was released from Israeli prison after 8 months of administrative detention, which means no charges, right? And he lost dozens and dozens of kilograms. And he is obviously, he suffers from malnutrition, he suffers from different kind of diseases. I mean, you can see the pictures online. And so obviously the treatment of Palestinian political prisoners, of whom we have about probably 9,000, amount, of course, to a war crime against humanity. This is the kind of thing that should be pursued, right? in the International Criminal Court as well, and should be talked about. So it's not just Gaza, it's not just the Palestinians captured in Gaza, it's all Palestinian political prisoners who are currently in Israeli hands.
Thank you so much, Doctor. I would like to invite next, that was quite sobering to hear, and thank you for sharing that research. I would like to invite Professor Dan Kovalik, who is also a human rights lawyer, to speak to us next, please.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, I mean, this is obviously a very important topic. I am very heartened by what's been happening at the ICJ and the ICC. The fact that ICC issued arrest warrants for Netanyahu, and I believe Bernie Gantz as well, is a huge, frankly, sea change for an organization that has, frankly, up till now, only prosecuted Africans. And in fact, apparently one of the, in response to the ICC, well, I guess, by the way, I guess the warrants have not been issued. They've been requested. I should be specific about that, because we'll see if they actually issue the warrants, because we know a lot of pressure has been put on the ICC. In fact, apparently an unnamed Western leader told the prosecutor seeking the warrants, she specifically said that, the ICC is only for Africans and for rogues like Putin. Clearly meaning, it's not for Western leaders. And that is how it's operated till now. That is the truth of it. Obviously, it wasn't created for that purpose, though, again, I'm obviously some of the leaders, like Bill Clinton, who helped negotiate it, maybe that was their plan all along, and that it was not going to be used against them. And of course, Clinton never got it ratified. But so look, the fact that they are going after major Western leaders at this moment, or may go after them, or at least poised to go after them, is a huge advance. I mean, because if you want a rule of law, obviously, and I'm a lawyer, but I think most people understand a rule of law only exists if it applies to the weak and the strong alike, right? If it only applies to the weak, it ain't a law, right? That's just power politics. That's the rule of the jungle, and that's what we've had. And of course, the ICJ has issued provisional measures now twice against Israel, which again is very important. Though, again, let's be honest, Israel has not complied with those, has not changed course due to the ICC prosecutors seeking warrants. In fact, they seem to have redoubled their atrocities. I mean, we've seen these massacres in the last week that keep just growing in intensity. With 274 Palestinians that we know of just killed over the weekend in one massacre that the U.S., we know, helped carry out. The U.S. has been open about the fact that it gave the intelligence for where to carry out that offensive. The 4 hostages that were released, rescued, I guess, were brought to a U.S. helicopter that had U.S. troops and were taken out. And by the way, that helicopter was stationed right near the alleged humanitarian port that Biden set up, that's apparently not humanitarian at all. The U.S. has admitted that no aid has been delivered to any Palestinians from that port. Some aid's been brought in. None of it's been brought to the Palestinians. And I suspect very little ever will be. But I think you will see troop movement through the port. I think you'll see arms through the port. And maybe Palestinians being brought out through that port as part of the ethnic cleansing. So the need for the international community to respond to all this is critical. And it's critical not just to go after Israeli leaders, but they have to go after U.S. leaders who are aiding and abetting this genocide, this genocide could not be carried out without the United States. The U.S. is providing something like 70% of Israelis' munitions, including these massive 2,000-pound bombs. Even U.S. military experts have said that they wouldn't use 500-pound bombs in an urban theater like Gaza. We're supplying, we meaning the United States, is supplying Israel 2,000-pound bombs that they're using in this urban setting, which can only do disproportionate damage to civilians, and is. And so what we're seeing is this massive casualty rate, which I'm sure is undercounted. We think, I think the official figure is something like 36, 37,000 dead Palestinians, including 15,000 children. I think you can easily double that because the people still left under rubble, because the fact that these are being counted by the Palestinian Health Ministry, which is barely functioning, right? I mean, these numbers are counted through hospitals. Well, Israel's destroyed every hospital. So there's no way they're getting all the numbers. I think you're going to see numbers in the hundreds of thousands. I'm very sorry to say. It's already been mentioned, the other atrocities. There's been a new report that was just released, or a couple. One through the New York Times, the other one, I think, through the Washington Post, if I'm not mistaken, that recounts reports by whistleblowers, by prison officials, by Palestinian prisoners that have been released that have talked about horrible crimes against Palestinians in Israeli jails. Again, a lot of that have been recounted. I don't need to repeat that, but they include rape. They include people being killed by sodomy with these heated up metal poles. Just despicable acts that we know are happening and that are being underreported, of course. So the international community has to act. I would hope it through the ICC, through the ICJ, and through the Security Council of the United Nations. But so far, there's been no real action, frankly, that's been enforced against the Israelis. And that's where the trouble is. There's no enforcement. Let's face it, there has to be some sort of military intervention to stop this. That's all. I mean, I'd like to see the Security Council authorize that, but the U.S. will veto any attempt in that position. And so some people are arguing, and I join in this call, and I guess I'll end my remarks with this. There needs to be a uniting for peace action by the UN General Assembly that can override the Security Council and call for some sort of military intervention to stop this massacre, this genocide. If ever there was a need for humanitarian intervention, and that term has been so misused, mostly by the West, to carry out regime change and all sorts of other terrible wars. But if that term means anything, it should be applied here to halt the genocide. And I think people need, my view is that the pressure should not be on the ICC or the ICJ. It should be put on the General Assembly, on members of the General Assembly, to have a uniting for peace resolution, which can override the Security Council and do what the Security Council should do, and that is call for a military body to be organized to halt this and maybe even set up a no-fly zone over over Gaza. So that is my modest proposal for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Kowalik. I think that's quite interesting. And just going back a little bit to sort of the lawyers that we have with us who would be able to, this is a question I think certain people do have, is that specifically within the ICC, if Israel has been using this legal loophole essentially to instigate investigations to like delay certain proceedings. And it's if essentially like I think it's known as complementarity.
Complementarianism. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I'm just curious in that if sort of if the national jurisdictions are not really executing these investigations in good faith, or they're just prolonging them to sort of delay certain things happening, is there a way to sidestep that or overcome that specifically?
Well, yes. I mean, there are, under international law, issues of complementarianism can be overrode, as you say, if the domestic jurisdiction, in this case Israel, can't or won't properly investigate and prosecute wrongdoers. And in this case, we can be absolutely certain they will not do that, right? And so you could override it. But then what? That's the problem. Then what? First of all, as I said, the prosecutors already asked for arrest warrants. Those arrest warrants haven't even been issued yet. Meanwhile, thousands of people continue to die. There's a famine that's already arisen in Gaza. I mean, time is of the essence. How long is it going to take for this to happen, for arrest warrants to be issued, for some police action to be carried out? And frankly, going after two top-ranking leaders of Israel, while that's critical and important, won't stop what's happening. There'll be two more leaders to take their place. So we have to talk in terms of real practicalities and in terms of the real world. In the real world, Israel will not stop until it is stopped. And it is stopped through force, which the Security Council can authorize, but will not. And really, the ICJ and ICC don't have that power to authorize that. It's got to be the General Assembly through a Uniting for Peace resolution. Again, that's what I come down on. I'm trying to be totally realistic here. Frankly, what the Yemenis are doing is probably the best any country's doing right now. And again, that just needs to be said, and it needs to be recognized, and we need to be honest with ourselves. That it's that type of action that will stop this and nothing else. It just is in World War II. You weren't going to tell the Nazis to follow international law. You needed the Red Army, and we need that sort of thing now, to put a finer point on it. So there you go.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite next to speak to us Mr. Ivo Mendaza, who is an academic author and an advisory council member at FPRI.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this important discussion. It's the second time around. I want, before I continue, is to first and foremost acknowledge the previous speakers, and at the outset to support Dan's recommendation, and to go beyond the formalities and demand that the UN takes action on Israel. And I think our lawyers and various organizations can put in place a modus operandi towards that. That's the only way to stop the Israeli aggression, stop the genocide. I agree with Dan too that the ICC and ICJ are hamstrung by the role of the US in particular, but also its allies, Israeli allies, and we're not going anywhere at this rate. The arrogance is incredible on the part of Israel. Before I make a substantive point, I also want to raise the point which Harun made earlier on about the involvement of South Americans. Which country was it again? the country that
Ecuador.
Ecuador. I'm amazed about that. Also, since some of the Central American countries have already supported South Africa, the ICJ, I'd like to know which other countries are involved. In what capacity are they involved? Are these volunteers or these actually posted, sent there by their countries? If so,
Oh,
we need to
I
expose.
understand. These are just IDF soldiers who either have Ecuadorian ancestry or are dual nationals living in Ecuador with Israeli nationality and Ecuadorian nationality, who have gone to Palestine right now and are actively participating in what's happening in Gaza. And
That's
we
incredible.
have files on, I think up till now, 109 people, and I think within 1 week we'll have 1,000, all online.
I think this should be exposed and especially put on X, former Twitter. Because
Certainly.
I've not seen, some of us are very active on Twitter on the Palestine issue, along with people like Jeremy Corbyn and the Greek former minister. I think we need to publicize this and put them under pressure, you know. And then I also want to follow up the point made by Noah about the treatment of Palestinian prisoners. This is, again, is not in the public domain. It's a very important detail which must be made public, and we need to publicize it and get the relevant international organizations to take note of that. The only substantive point I have to make is one I made last time, which is the amazing gap between the official position of the Western countries on the situation in the Middle East, on Gaza, in particular on the Palestinian question, on the one hand, and the population at large. I think we need to acknowledge the demonstrations and protests which are being held almost every week in those countries. In the US, in the UK, in the Netherlands, in the Spain, the various countries that have stood up, and also highlight the fact that at least 5 countries, among them Ireland and Spain, have now recognized the Palestinian state. These are important developments as part of the struggle against the Israeli aggression. And I think that we need to link up with the various domestic situations across Europe and North America, so that there's a bigger link. And I think what's missing now, it's clear that the population at large, the intellectuals, university students, professionals are clearly against the policies of their countries in these countries. The question is, how do we galvanize, how do we coordinate as part of a global movement to save the Palestinians from this continued aggression? It is disgraceful. It exposes the double standards of the Western countries and makes farcical their claim that they are Democrats. It's just incredible. It is a sad situation. Can you imagine anything worse than this in the last 4 decades? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think just thank you so much for your intervention, but also on your last point, specifically with the elections coming up, I suppose there are quite a few people who would be very much interested in our discussion, also hearing from all of you as to sort of this sort of position that President Biden has seemed to take, that it doesn't really matter what Karim Khan is doing or what the ICC is doing, even though the elections are so up close. And I guess I think we would be curious to hear on that. But before that, I would like to invite our next and final speaker, I think, who is Naomi Barasa, and who is a Dutch lawyer and also a member of the 30th March movement. No, wait, sorry. I'm so sorry. Naomi Barasa, who is a Kenyan social justice activist. I'm so sorry. Yes. Naomi Barasa, who is a Kenyan social justice activist. I'm so sorry. Naomi, please.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I am not in the best environment. I'm in public transport, so it's gonna be a bit shaky. But I also didn't. I wasn't invited to speak, so I was just invited to participate in the webinar. But if I was to just share a few things, so I didn't prepare as a speaker, but from just my own observations, I will raise a few points and mainly about AU and the commitment for AU, but also the founding principles of our organization, Africa Organization, OAU, the Organization of African Unity. That is the organization that presided the AU that is present, as is presently known. It was founded on the principles of solidarity for people who are oppressed, but also on principles of anti-colonization. So when we look at AU, for example, taking initially when AU had invited Israel as an with an observer status, for us we felt like that was a serious betrayal to the founding principles of the Organization of African Unity, which is now AU. And for that reason, then it was imperative that Israel be removed, the observer status be taken away, because we couldn't have kept someone who is an oppressor, a colonizer, yet our founding principles were basically going against what Israel is doing. And for that reason, I would like to say that in Africa, countries that are members of AU need to clearly put a push on the ICJ and ICC on the accountability, particularly for Israel and Germany, America, Britain, all the people that are supporting and sending weapons to Gaza. So definitely that's one thing that the African Union needs to take very, very strongly, especially because, as the first speaker started by saying, for a long time, the ICC was really used to induct African leaders. And for the first time, we are seeing the ICC going for a Western leader. So this is the moment that African Union needs to push, and especially because the population in Africa has been pro-Palestine. It's only the governments that have been pro-Israel, but the populations are pro-Palestine. So we really need to see African Union push hard for accountability on Netanyahu, and even the US, especially with this recent attack where American soldiers have been used to attack in the name of humanitarian support, to attack a camp and really commit a massacre as they did over the weekend. That's one of the points I would like to make. But also, I feel like once we are done with this whole issue around Netanyahu and Joe Biden, we really need to start looking, using the international world courts. We need to start interrogating the whole fallacy around democracy, because we cannot have one nation trump over all the other democracies and still continue believing in democracy as it is. So the model clearly is a failed model. So that is what I would want to say. I did not prepare as a speaker, so I just came in today as a participant. But thank you for allowing me to say a few points. How much?
Thank you so much. I think we had this, and we had a bit of. I see Noah replying now to this question that I was just about to bring up, which is that sort of we'd be really curious to hear and how you perceive Biden's stance on international law generally, given his recent remarks attacking the ICC, especially after Karim Khan suggested issuing the arrest warrants. Especially and coming at a time when the elections are approaching. If any of our speakers would like to chip in, please do.
Well, let's be real. I mean, when you just pose that question, I wanted to blurt out, international law is dead. Let's be very honest about this. We're all lawyers, at least some of us are. I've been doing this for 21 years at the bar, and I've been busy with Palestine since 2008. And we're in 2024 right now. And I'm just one guy. There are many other colleagues in this country, in this jurisdiction, who have been trying their best and trying to get things to move along. And the situation has only worsened. If you look at the situation after the 7th of October, but even before the 7th of October, our colleague Noah just very rightly, pointed towards the situation of the Palestinian prisoners. Before the 7th of October, I think there were between 8,000 or 10,000 Palestinian prisoners in either administrative detention or some other form of detention, including minors. And nothing was being done about that. So what international law are we talking about? Again, that does not mean, we sit down and do nothing. We're all doing our part as we should be. But if we look at the way especially which the United States and the UK, both of them, and the Netherlands, with all due respect, have handled themselves. If I look at the Dutch government's inactivity regarding the re-export of F-35 spare parts to Israel, the fact that the High Court in this country gave an order to cease and desist, they appealed to the Supreme Court and they continued. And the first thing our Prime Minister did was hop on a plane to Israel the next day after the decision to somehow find a way to still be able to export the goods. So they really don't care. Let's be honest about it. I agree I forget the names, my apologies. He's gone. It was just here. The other colleague who said something after me, who pointed towards Yemen. So let's be real. The UN, the Security Council, is not going to do anything. It's just not going to happen. The US will continue vetoing any meaningful decision to stop what's happening. So that's not going to happen. Within the European Union, there's a difference of opinion. We have Spain and some other countries, Ireland, etc., who are very rightfully who lean towards Palestine and human rights, because that's what we're talking about. And with the UK and the Netherlands and some other countries who clearly stand on the principle, look, they are friends, let's just keep backing them whatever they do. And not the legal reality, the actual reality on the ground is this will continue. It will not stop whatever the UN says. In fact, I think, and I hope I'm wrong, for the sake of the Palestinians and the civilians there, it'll continue for at least 3 months, as you'll see. And it seems that the end goal is to create a buffer zone in Gaza and to clear, as they've been doing. And that's why they're using the 2,000-pound bombs. It's nothing to do with, as we know, hostages. It has to do with creating a buffer zone, flattening everything, so they can create an extra zone between, let's say, the Rafah crossing and Israel. Maybe they leave some Palestinians there to live. We'll see. This is the actual state of affairs. Again, we have to keep on doing what we're doing. I will continue fighting in the way which I'm fighting, as well as the rest of the 30th of March movement in, again, the Ecuadorial, the complaint against Ecuadorians is something which will take, I think, a few weeks, at least maybe 1 month, because of the amount of people we've identified. And again, within 3 days, we've identified 109 people. So give me 1 week, we'll have 1,000 people, no problem whatsoever. And we will get them, or at least we'll try and get them. But at the end of the day, if the ICC is blocked any more than it already has been, and if the international community, and of course we're talking about the US and the UK and countries like the Netherlands, if they keep doing what they're doing, nothing will happen in the legal spheres. And then we all have to rely on Yemen and other countries like that. That's the sad truth of the fact of the matter. Sorry for getting everybody down, but this is, I mean, this is real. This is what we're talking about. I'm also participating as a lawyer in other initiatives trying to help students with sit-ins, for example, which we've seen in the US, thank God. In this country, the police seems to be even more repressive in the Netherlands than in the US. Because what happens is within 1 or 2 days, encampments have been evacuated, have been cleared with extreme force, which we weren't used to in this country. So we are seeing a change of tone, not just in the political sphere, but also in policing. So that's another thing we are seeing in the society regarding also international law, the right of protest, which is an extremely important right, a human right. In the Netherlands, a constitutional right, which is being trampled upon. And we also, maybe you're not aware of that, we have a right-wing government, extreme right government, which has which is coming into power right now. So that doesn't bode well for the near future regarding this issue and other issues. Sorry again for getting everybody down on a Monday, but these are the facts we're dealing with in this country, and it's very difficult. In fact, I'm probably going to be reprimanded by the Bar Ethics Commission because of my work. I'm being real right now, which I don't really care about. I'll wear that as a badge of honor. But it's something which is happening here. And many other lawyers who are either allied with the 30th of March movement or in subgroups are scared of even talking about this. I nearly wanted to say I rest my case, but let's not do that.
Yeah, I think the reprisals sort of people speaking out has really been felt quite strongly in fields that might not even necessarily be related. So I think that is something that very strongly has been felt. And yes, I think we have been following the EU elections as well, the parliament elections, which are just coming out, which also don't seem to be that reassuring. But on the same note, I know that Ms. Noah, you were going to say something. So if you still would like to chip in, that would be great. On my initial question. I think you're on mute. Noah? Hi, yes.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I want to remind everybody that Netanyahu, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court, has been officially invited to speak to the joint session of Congress in the US, which is mind-boggling. I mean, can you imagine the Congress inviting like a Putin or Assad or Milosevic or any of them, right? Like a mega war criminal, and that both Republicans and Democrats sign on to this. And it tells you a lot about the ruling class in the United States, about where they are in terms of giving Israel kind of a leeway, given Israel exemptions from the law. I think that is not going to change anytime soon. One of the things that is happening this election is AIPAC, for instance, that is just spending billions, right, on Israel-friendly candidates. And then you have the Democratic Party itself from the inside, basically suffocating any kind of dissent. They are so scared of dissent that this summer they have their national convention in Chicago, but what they want to do is make the more crucial parts of the convention virtual, right? Because they're afraid. And so this is where we are. Salvation is not going to come from the United States. Biden is not going to change his mind. Biden is not going to save Palestinians. Biden is going to be actually a major hurdle, right? I'm very interested in what Dan said earlier. It's a shame that he left because he talked about a particular mechanism within the UN that can override, a U.S. veto. I am after this. I'm going to read up on that, and see. But I feel incredibly bleak about this election. I'm not a lawyer. I'm only a historian, but I join Haroon with his pessimism for now, right? I don't know what is going to stop this. I don't know. And yet we need to keep doing what we're doing in the small ways, right, that we're doing them, right?
Hi, everyone. This is me, Khulud, from the organizers of the webinar. I have a question for you all since you are based in the US and Europe. So since Haroon said we have to rely or there is no other option or hope but relying on Yemen, but isn't it time to the people of US and European countries to make whatever it takes or pressure on their governments to make pressures on them to stop supporting Israel? At the end of the day, the countries, the governments will have to respect their own people. I mean, they are not like the Arab countries, because the people of Arab countries, we know what is going on, dictatorships and authoritarians, or democracy worldwide is just a lie. And when it comes to like human rights or combating Israel, there is no democracy and there is no human rights, because if we relied on Yemen is a force, but there will be a stronger force to combat it. So isn't it time to the people of the US, the people themselves, to do something to put pressure on their government?
Could I perhaps say something about that?
Yeah, sure.
Very much, sister. I agree wholeheartedly with you. Now, again, I'm not just in the 30th of March movement. That's my main focus right now. But we are also supporting students, again, as I just mentioned, and other actions. The problem is there isn't a majority or even a notable minority who are willing to put their careers on the line. I am, alhamdulillah, no problem whatsoever. Day or night, if you call me, I'm there. There's a very small group who is courageous. Well, I'm not courageous, but who are really much more courageous than me, and are willing to do, sit-ins to bar companies like Elbit Systems here in the Netherlands, which has a not a factory, but I think a storehouse in Woensel, where the F-35 parts are coming from, or going via, who are willing to do much more. But that's a very small group. They're not that organized. And we see an extremely repressive policy from the police and from society in general. In this country, Zionism in general and Zionist activism through media, through Sister Naomi was speaking about AIPAC. We have CD here and some other organizations which are extremely strong and which political parties are scared of disappointing. Now, there are activists in this country who are ready to block roads. Which is, I think, necessary at this point. The activists in this country are willing to do much more, but there are not that many of them. So I agree wholeheartedly with you, sister. Yes, we should be doing more, but because there are so few of us who are willing to put everything on the line, because that's what's necessary right now. This is a moment in time which I really believe, when we look back at it, if we're still alive after 50 years, we'll clearly see who was wrong and who was right. We are, I think, on the right side. The others are on the wrong side. But because of the situations within our countries, within the Netherlands, within countries like Germany, where they're even more repressive regarding anti-Zionism and Palestinian rights, it's not possible for you to do much through the mainstream. And people who are ready to do stuff aren't really supported enough or well enough. That's the main problem. But I agree, we have to, and we should be doing much more than we're doing. Whenever I speak at rallies and at protests, this is the first thing I say. And I'm especially, I know we are not all Muslims right now, but I do point towards the Muslim minority in this country. There are 1 million Muslims in the Netherlands. And I was at a protest, I think 4 days ago in Gouda, which is a small city, which has at least, let's say, 20,000, 15,000 Muslims and 4 mosques. And we had 100 people standing there. This is a situation of people who are, who are willing to do something. And there are about 100 people there who are shouting, of course, which is important. You have to protest in a democratic fashion. But to get governments to listen to you, you have to do more than that. In this country, we've had a farmers' movement. The farmers' movement, just before the previous election, was able to block entire motorways because they had tractors and, they had nothing to lose. And because of their blockades of motorways, they got The Hague, they got the politicians to listen to them and to change policy. And at the previous elections, they won a lot of seats. I think they were the 3rd or 4th party in this country. The problem is regarding Palestine and human rights, because that's what we're talking about. There aren't enough people who are willing to put not their lives, but their reputations, their job, their careers on the line. And that's why for the coming few months, not much is going to happen. I hope I'm proven wrong by the students. I hope I'm proven wrong by grassroots movements and by activists, but I'm afraid I won't be.
Thank you
Yes.
so much, Mr.
Yes.
Reza.
Exactly. There is something I would like to add, if you please. So, but still, the arm trade, the companies, the factories are present on those countries, the Western countries. The people who are manufacturing this are from the people of those countries. The engineers, also the taxpayers in the U.S. Their money are just sent to Israel at the time where the American citizens, the American students cannot enjoy free health insurance, millions of homeless in the streets, and there is no free education in the US. Their money are just sent to Israel, where Israeli soldiers are enjoying bombing just for fun, killing and bombing children. So it is not only the rights of Palestinians or Arabs or Muslims in the Arab world, it is also their own rights, how they not fighting for their own right, their own money, the taxpayers. And so, you got my point? Yes.
If I may say something about the United States. So you were talking, Khulud, about people holding governments accountable. The problem that the US sorry.
No, it's okay. Continue. It was by mistake.
So the US political system is not democratic, right? On a variety of issues, there is pretty much a consensus, right? For example, I mean, on the issue of like ceasefire, for instance, there is a majority of voters, including Republican voters, who support ceasefire on the issue of abortion and reproductive rights. I mean, there's a host of issues, and yet what you have here is minority rule, right? It's because the system here, because of historical reasons, right, is set up to not be a reflection of the will of the majority. So we're kind of at a stalemate. Right. This is why you see all the people in the streets. This is why you have the students movement. Now, when it comes to the weapons manufacturers, I'm in Massachusetts, where a lot of the weapons manufacturers, like the big ones, are located right here in Massachusetts. And so I've been talking to a lot of, colleagues and also students who support the investment, right? They want weapons manufacturers out of their institutions. But the problem, of course, is that some of these institutions are completely wedded to some of these weapons manufacturers because these manufacturers provide, you know, entry-level jobs and internship, and also provide funding for different kind of research projects and so on. And so not only institutions are, of course, reluctant to divest. Some students I say, I actually, so said to me, I don't want my institution to be invested in weapons, but I'm going to be an engineer, and, you know, when this company is offering us all these benefits and all these internships, oh, I can't really say no. It's my career, right? Yeah, stalemate.
Yes, but I have read once, يعني at the time where Biden is sending $300 billion to Israel, it only takes $15 billion to يعني solve the problem of homeless. And by the rest of the money, there will be free health insurance for all the citizens living over there. So how they just trade their own rights, their own privilege living there for some crazy people bombing children for fun. Most of the footages come just for fun.
I understand your point. I understand your point fully. It's like, and let's, again, I'm very real, and we all are in this. People don't seem to care anymore. I'm also part of a grassroots group in which we now have to physically protect demonstrations and protect students from being beaten up. So it's a small group, and what we see, and that because of that, we are at many demonstrations and sit-ins. And what you see is, again, I just gave you an example of a few days ago. You see that the protests, I know in London, there was a massive protest not long ago. In the Netherlands, they seem to be getting smaller in number because people really say, look, we haven't really been able to achieve much up till now. Why should we go out in the rain now? That seems to be what's changing here. And on the other hand, we see that because of the Dutch electoral system and the present extreme right, because it's really an actual extreme right government which is coming into power here, it doesn't seem to be effective at all. We have one or two parties in parliament which are speaking up for human rights and Palestinian rights, as well as human rights for everybody, but they aren't really being heard, except for we see them, we get, you know, it makes us a bit more happy, and that's it. About the effectiveness of things to come, we have to remember not to diminish because I'm not. We're still doing what we're doing. We're still, you know, preparing complaints. The Ecuadorian complaint, other complaints are coming up. So we keep fighting the good fight. But we must understand one thing. I do not expect any successful prosecution within Europe in the coming 2 years. It's not going to happen. But we have lodged through the 30th March movement a new complaint. I didn't tell you about that, against 5 Belgian and Israeli nationals this week. So we are doing stuff. We have lodged complaints in France last month, and we're looking again. We're going to South America now. At least we're not going there, but we are broadening our view as far as that's concerned. We have to keep doing that, but we have to be real about what it will achieve in the short term. In the long term, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, we will win eventually, inshallah. But it'll take some time. And we should also try to inspire those students and that small minority, which we've been talking about today, to keep up the good work, to broaden their activism, and to start, and I agree with the sister, to start actually physically, if necessarily. It's a part of a legal, constitutional human rights view and approach to demonstrating and the right of demonstration, of being able to demonstrate and to protest, physically block weapons manufacturers, physically block ports, physically block harbors. We help these guys, these brothers and sisters and comrades legally, free of charge anyway. So we are trying to support them in that. And I think we have to inspire them to do more.
Yes, I hope people of the countries will take whatever action it needs before table will turn, because one day this might come to our countries.
I think just on that as well, something really important that even though there might be a right-wing shift at times and you're very close to it, these things can be in waves. And, I think it's the fact that, you continue to do this work, to continue to push, means that there will always be the possibility of the tide turning, which I think gives hope. Not only, I guess, one sort of positive thing is that it gives hope sort of across the world where people might have seen a sort of right-wing movement for many, many years and don't feel like things can ever change. But sort of building, and this change is not like, maybe not that visible, but I think there's always hope that even if an institution is flawed, that there's still space to work within it and change it, because I don't think any government necessarily has an incentive not to maintain the status quo. So I think as sort of disruptors, as people challenging the government, having the space and ability to do that, and we see, especially within Palestine, how closed that can be, oftentimes even in democratic countries, how close that space can often be. I think it's quite inspiring, I think, for all of us as well, to sort of maintain that work, which could be a bit thankless at times, I guess, but it's really, really important nevertheless. Yeah. So anyway, that was really interesting. Thank you so much. I quite enjoyed that. I know that, like, we're based in the UK, and so we're expecting some change in the next 1 month, but yet to be seen how far that change is going to go in terms of real policy. And so, yeah, it's really, really great. If anyone has any final comments, that would be really great. I'd love to hear from you all. If you have any closing remarks.
I just say keep up the good work.